4th of July has always been my favorite holiday. It's not just about the patriotism or the history. For me, it's always been about the feeling. It's the peak of summer, that perfect moment when the days are long and hot and the nights are warm and full of possibility. It smells like freshly cut grass, barbecue smoke, and that faint, sharp scent of gunpowder in the air. This story happened 3 summers ago, and it turned my favorite holiday into a source of quiet, lingering dread. My friend, Mark, and his girlfriend, Chloe, had rented a small cabin for the long weekend. It was up in northern Michigan, nestled on the edge of a small, secluded lake, the kind of place you only find if you know exactly where you're going. The plan was simple: swim, grill, drink a few too many beers, and set off an irresponsible amount of fireworks over the water. For the first 2 days, it was perfect. We were living in a bubble of summer bliss, completely cut off from the real world. The nearest town was a good 30-minute drive away, and cell service was spotty at best. We didn't care. In fact, we welcomed the isolation. On the night of the 4th, after a day of sun and a massive dinner, we were sitting around a bonfire by the lake's edge, watching the last of the embers glow against the star-filled sky. That's when Mark announced the tragedy. "Guys," he said, holding up an empty cardboard case, "we're out of beer." A collective groan went through our small group. It was only 10:30 p.m., too early to call it a night. After a brief debate, I volunteered to make the run. I'd had the least to drink, and I knew the way to a 24-hour gas station on the main highway we had passed on the way in. I grabbed my keys and wallet, promising to be back in an hour, tops. The drive there was peaceful. My windows were down, the cool night air rushing in, carrying the scent of pine and damp earth. The road was a tunnel of black, carved through dense woods, with my headlights being the only thing cutting through the darkness. I bought a few cases of beer and some snacks at the brightly lit, sterile-looking gas station and started my journey back. It was on the return trip, about halfway back to the cabin on one of the darkest, most remote stretches of the road, that it happened. Thump, 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 thump. The unmistakable, sickening rhythm of a flat tire. I cursed under my breath, pulling over to the gravel shoulder. I got out and confirmed it with my phone's flashlight. The rear passenger side tire was completely flat, the rim nearly touching the ground. No problem, I thought. I'll just change it. Then the second problem hit me. I checked my trunk. There was a jack, but the spare tire was missing. The previous owner must have taken it out, and I'd never bothered to check. My heart sank. I pulled out my phone. As expected, no service. I was stranded. I sat there for maybe 15 minutes, the only sounds being the crickets and the ticking of my cooling engine. The darkness outside the small cone of my headlights felt absolute, oppressive. Just as a real sense of unease started to creep in, I saw a pair of headlights appear in my rearview mirror, growing steadily closer. It was a large, older model RV, the kind you see retired couples driving across the country. It slowed down and pulled up alongside me. An older man, maybe in his late 60s, with a kind, weathered face and a big white beard, rolled down his window. "Trouble, son?" he asked, his voice friendly and calm. "Yeah, flat tire and no spare," I said, feeling a wave of relief wash over me. "Well, look at that, Brenda," he called to his wife in the passenger seat. "Looks like this young man's in a pickle." A woman with soft gray hair and a warm smile leaned over. "Oh, you poor thing. We can't just leave you out here." They offered me a ride to the cabin. They said they were camping just a few miles further down the road, and it was no trouble at all. I was so grateful I didn't think twice. I locked my car, grabbed the beer, and climbed into their RV. Inside, it was surprisingly clean, almost unnaturally so. There were no personal trinkets, no photos, no clutter. It felt more like a hotel room than a home on wheels. Rick, the husband, offered me a beer from a small cooler between the front seats. "You look like you could use one," he chuckled. I accepted, popping the top. As we drove, he made small talk. He asked where I was from, what I did for a living, who I was with at the cabin. It was normal conversation, but his focus felt a little too intense. The beer also tasted off. It had a faint, bitter, metallic aftertaste, but I chalked it up to being some weird craft beer I'd never had before. I was more focused on giving them directions back to the lake house. After a few minutes, a heavy, syrupy feeling started to spread through my limbs. The edges of my vision began to swim, and Rick's voice seemed to be coming from a great distance. The panic hit me like a physical blow. This wasn't just the 2 beers I'd had earlier. Something was wrong. The beer they gave me, it was drugged. I tried to keep my voice steady. "You know, my friends are probably on their way to look for me right now," I lied. "They'll be worried?" Rick's friendly smile vanished. It was replaced by a cold, flat expression that turned my blood to ice. He looked at me in the rearview mirror, his eyes dark. "Oh, I don't think they'll be looking for you for a while, son." He didn't turn off onto the road that led to my cabin. He kept going straight, deeper into the forest. My mind was screaming. I looked at the door, my hand shaking as I reached for the handle. I knew I had one chance. I saw a sharp curve coming up in the headlights. I think I'm gonna be sick," I mumbled, lurching toward the door. As Rick slowed for the turn, I didn't hesitate. I threw all my weight against the door. It burst open, and I tumbled out onto the gravel road, the world spinning in a painful, chaotic blur of rocks and trees. I felt a sharp pain in my shoulder and the sting of gravel scraping my hands and face, but the adrenaline was immense. I heard the RV's brakes screeching behind me and a door slamming open. I didn't look back. I scrambled to my feet and plunged into the thick woods, crashing through branches and thorns, running blindly in the pitch-black darkness. I ran until my lungs burned and I couldn't hear their voices anymore. I found a dense thicket of bushes and crawled inside, where I hid, shaking, for what felt like an eternity. I must have passed out because the next thing I knew, faint gray light was filtering through the leaves. It was dawn. I was scraped, bruised, and my head was throbbing, but I was alive. I eventually made my way back to a main road, where a kind trucker stopped and gave me a ride back to the gas station. My car was gone. The police were called. They took my statement, but without my car and with a vague description of an older couple in a common RV, there was nothing they could do. To them, I was just another kid who got too drunk on the 4th of July, wandered off, and lost his car. They couldn't understand the cold, calculated look in Rick's eyes. They couldn't taste the bitter beer. I never saw my car again, but that's not the part that haunts me. What haunts me is the what if. What if I hadn't jumped? What was in that sterile, spotless RV? What was their plan for me on that long, dark road home? I don't know what they wanted. And the scariest part is, I never will.